What's going on, citizens of Gorilla City? Today we'll be starting a new series where we'll go over the origins, publication history, and powers of certain heroes and villains. Today we're going to be starting with Namor the Sub-Mariner, who is basically, I don't want to say he's Marvel's equivalent to Aquaman, because he actually came out before Aquaman. He's like the first superhero, him and the original Human Torch. Just haven't heard from him too much lately, and you'll see why as I go through this. But anyways, let's start off 1939, the debut of Marvel Comics 1, The Sub-Mariner. That marks Namor's debut. And his story basically begins, his father, Leonard Mackenzie, was the commander of a vessel that conducted experiments off the coast of Antarctica that killed a large number of Atlanteans, who were the inhabitants of Atlantis, which is Namor's home. So Namor's mother, Fen, was an Atlantean spy, and she was tasked with finding out what was going on with this vessel. Why were they conducting experiments that were killing so many Atlanteans? And she was to report back to Atlantis. However, she fell in love with Leonard and became pregnant by him, kind of foreshadowing Namor's love life in a sense, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, she took a long time to come back, so the Atlanteans thought that, okay, maybe she got captured or killed or whatever, or maybe she's not and we have to go rescue her. So they went and invaded the vessel and they killed Leonard, which resulted in Namor's mother, Fen, returning back home and having Namor there. So as a result of that, he is a half human, half Atlantean. One thing to note here, Atlanteans, well, initially they were green skin and then they went to blue skin, but Namor has regular fair skin, like a regular human being. He's believed to be the first mutant in the Marvel universe relative to our time, I would say, because as we know, Apocalypse and Wolverine, they've been around for eons. So anyways, the Submariner, it serves to show us the number one thing that makes up the essence of Namor's character even to this day. He distrusts and dislikes surface dwellers, otherwise known as humans. Alright, so this comic, basically the whole series, chronicles just like, little adventures that Namor had with his cousin Dorma, as far as bringing it to the surface dwellers, you know what I'm saying, holding it down for Atlanteans. But shortly after his debut, the United States entered World War II, and this is not just only in the Marvel universe, but in real life. I'm gonna make another video talking about like World War II and the impact that it had on comics and vice versa. But we'll skip over that right now. Namor actually fought alongside the Allied powers. He was on the same team as Captain America and the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond. After this, Namor had his own comic series from 1941 to 49. This was titled simply Submariner Comics, and despite having what we would consider today a lengthy run of 8 years, they only published 32 issues in its initial run before 10 more were made, and they kind of try to revitalize the series in 1954 and 55. This series is not necessarily important to the continuity of the Marvel universe anymore, but it showcased the adventures of Namor and fellow Atlanteans like Dorma, and it displayed Namor's power. While he wasn't the charming, slick talking, arrogant Namor we all know and love now, he was still pretty damn powerful. Unfortunately, the 1950s weren't too kind to Namor at all. As I mentioned before, Marvel, who was at the time known as Atlas Comics, tried to revive Namor's series, but canceled it because the sales just weren't doing it for them. During this time, he even had a live-action television series that was planned, but eventually got canceled. Then in 1962, Namor officially comes back to the Marvel Universe in Fantastic Four #4. Johnny Storm's walking around Manhattan and he sees an amnesiac homeless guy who he takes a liking to. He uses his flame powers to shave the guy's beard, and it's revealed to us that it's none other than Namor. Johnny dumps Namor into a river, and this restores his memory, causing him to return to Atlantis. It's also important to know that this is the very first time Marvel Comics ever calls Namor's home Atlantis. When Namor comes back to Atlantis, he finds out it was more or less destroyed by nuclear testing that went on while he was being the amnesiac. He returns to see the carnage and also notices his people are nowhere to be found, so he swears vengeance to surface dwellers again. He attacks Earth with the sea monster Giganto before the Fantastic Four stop him. It is during this fight that the romance between Namor and Sue Storm is introduced. Although Sue initially rejects Namor's advances, she eventually gives gives in to his charms, and the two still have romantic encounters to this day, despite Sue's marriage to Reed Richards. This version of Namor was much more different than how he initially was during his 1940s run. He is much more authoritative and arrogant, his speech patterns sound more poetic, and he debuted the Atlanteans' battle cry, Imperius Rex. This is the version of Namor that is still being written today. This revitalization of Namor also saw him teaming up with the likes of Doctor Doom, Magneto, the Incredible Hulk, and he even fields an offer to join the Avengers after fighting them alongside the Hulk and finding Steve Rogers' frozen body. Namor wouldn't get his own series again until 1968 due to legal obligations. The Sub-Mariner ran 72 issues from 68 until 74 and introduced more characters who are now prominent in Namor lore like Tiger Shark and Stingray. The last issue was a crossover with DC Comics, and we got to see Namor and Aquaman meet each other for the first time. Unfortunately, after this, Namor went through publication hell. Marvel tried to launch a team-up series with Namor and Doctor Doom, but bad sales led to Namor being dropped out of the co-star spot. For the rest of the 70s and 80s, Namor takes a back seat and more or less just becomes an anti-hero that is seen to Atlantis. Although in the 80s, he did have a couple of series that gave us a little more of the background of his origin story. He finally gets another comic series in 1990. Namor The Sub-Mariner ran until 1995 for 62 issues. Prior to this story taking place, Namor was presumed to have been killed in a war of Atlanteans versus dwellers. Father and daughter, Caleb and Carrie Alexander, found Namor's body in the Pacific and nursed him back to health. Namor wished to preserve the ocean and through Caleb, purchased a company he later renamed to Oracle Inc. The writers of this series also better explained how Namor's powers worked. For example, Caleb explains to him that the reason for his sudden mood swings is because his chemical imbalance is a bit off due to his human and amphibious nature. The most important thing to note of this series is Namor rescues Iron Fist from a dimension he was in since the 70s. Since then, Namor has really just served as a reoccurring character and perhaps what many would label as a B-list Marvel hero. We got too many series in the 2000s, but only one worth noting in my opinion. Sub-Mariner Volume 2, because in this we are introduced to his son Kamar. Namor has a large amount of superpowers. As mentioned earlier, he is half man, half Atlantean. Being half Atlantean grants him stuff like super strength, agility, durability, as well as the ability to speak with sea animals. Namor benefits from water in that as long as he is in contact with it, it will heal him and make him more powerful. Namor also has the ability to fight and is believed to be the first comic book hero with such an ability. Namor even boasts strengths in both the political and business realm. He is truly a jack of all trades. Marvel has been trying to develop a movie on Namor since 1997 at the earliest. But as with most comic book IPs that aren't insanely popular like Batman, Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman, this movie hasn't even been greenlit yet. For many years, the main concern has been that Marvel has had not the rights, but that all changed last year. So we'll see what comes of it. In my opinion, it's a shame that Marvel hasn't been able to make Namor a prominent figure among their casual readers. He is one of the best characters in comics, period, and I don't see any reason why fans shouldn't love him like we love all other anti-heroes in comics. I especially love the fact that he's a ladies' man and he's kind of disrespectful about it. There's one instance where he literally hits on Emma Frost, and Cyclops, who at the time was dating Emma Frost, was about 3 feet away from both of them. Namor in some ways is a Machiavellian-like hero, and this is rarely seen in comics. So that's it for today's episode. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to share this as well. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not gonna have like a set schedule on these. I'm just gonna try to get them out as much as possible. I'm gonna try to at least do like 2 or 3 a week. You know, whenever I get them done, I'll just get them done. As you know, I have the 2 other channels that I have to worry about now, but no excuses. I'm gonna make sure that I still get out the breakdowns of the story arcs as well as the individual character breakdowns, and I'm gonna have a couple more things planned. Just stay tuned, and I'll see you soon, Gorilla City.